Sacred texts are sacred because they are gifts of great teachers intended for the elevation of human consciousness. The secret doctrine is secret because it lies beyond the reach of separative consciousness in the interior recesses of our being. In our spring lecture series, we spoke about the thread doctrine as the source of all sacred texts. There is a distinction to be drawn between the secret doctrine, the book and teachings given to us by H.P. Blavatsky in 1888, and the secret doctrine, which is none other than the thread doctrine itself, towards which the book points. If the secret doctrine could be spelled out in its entirety in book form, in what sense would it be secret? And we're going to have Shobha stand in for HPB when she says,
"This is the true reason, perhaps, why the outline of a few fundamental truths from the secret doctrine of the archaic ages is now permitted to see the light. After long millenniums of the most profound silence and secrecy, I say a few truths advisedly, because that which must remain unsaid could not be contained in 100 such volumes, nor could it be imparted to the present generation of Sadducees. But even the little that is now given is better than complete silence upon these vital truths." The Secret Doctrine, Book 1, Roman numeral 22.
One of the key points of HPB's book is to reestablish the notion, known by the ancients and forgotten in modern times, of this parentage between the esoteric source of wisdom and its many exoteric expressions throughout the ages. HPB goes on to say,
For the esoteric philosophy alone is alone calculated to withstand, in this age of crass and illogical materialism, the repeated attacks on all and everything man holds most dear and sacred in his inner spiritual life. The true philosopher, the student of the esoteric wisdom, entirely loses sight of personalities, dogmatic beliefs, and special religions. Moreover, esoteric philosophy reconciles all religions, strips every one of its outward human garments, and shows the root of each to be identical with that of every other great religion. It proves the necessity of an absolute divine principle in nature. It denies deity no more than it does the sun. Secret Doctrine, Book 1, Roman numeral, page 20.
in her book, HPB makes it clear that the real secret doctrine is primarily unwritten, and that the book itself might be seen as a methodology, or a yoga, as B.P. Wadia calls it, to move us towards the higher truths hidden within us and within the universe. It was written for the needs of man at this point in human evolution. We are challenged with the proposition, to be explored independently by all, that behind manifest nature, behind and within the universe, behind our consciousness, and woven into the very fabric of life, is divine wisdom. Sacred texts like the Quran, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, the Tao Te Ching, the Crest Jewel of Wisdom, or the Zohar, to name just a few, are filled with hints and clues which require keys to understand. Should we ignore the universal perspective pointed to in the Secret Doctrine, we lose a golden opportunity to plumb the depths of these sacred texts that we so cherish. When Westerners, inspired by Gandhi's message of truth and nonviolence, came to India to join his ashram, many asked him if he expected them to convert to Hinduism. His reply was, "Of course not. If you dig deep enough into your own religious tradition, you will find the same exact truths found in the Indian traditions." So how does the Secret Doctrine of HPB help us to deepen our understanding of sacred texts? Perhaps this can be best understood through three words: metaphysics, symbolism, and ethics. The sacred texts of mankind have a common underlying set of principles and ideas. Beginning with metaphysics, the Secret Doctrine challenges the reader to explore the veracity of three fundamental metaphysical propositions, and to look at them in the writings of great teachers, to probe for them in nature, and to look for their outlines in the circumstances of human life. These ideas are, first, that unity prevails. Life, the cosmos, nature is a single whole. Philosophically, the absolute, as the sourceless source of all life, however defined, and preceding and transcending any formulations of the God idea. The second major idea, that the universe and all that is in it is subject to the laws of periodicity, cycles of rest and activity, day and night, breathing in and out, cause and effect, and the balancing of opposites. Thirdly, everything in life is evolving towards the next higher plane of existence, towards the fulfillment of the next level of potential available for that being. So call the three deity, cycles, and being. Call it the whole, the law, and evolution. But should you take up the challenge, which is the universality and omnipresence of these three principles, and let us be clear, when we say universal is meant everywhere, at any time, in everything, no exceptions. Great teachers insist that these three ideas are found present in everything in life. It is impossible to exclude them. This is the proposition that we are testing. In regards to sacred texts, the claim is that these three ideas are the underpinnings of all authentic spiritual teachings. These central ideas are expressed uniquely in each tradition. Should we look deeply enough, we are told, we will find the same hidden metaphysics expressed in different ways, in different languages, in different times, for different cultures, in differing degrees of emphasis. We are invited to challenge this idea and to test it out for ourselves. It is rather like a music teacher telling her student that if she spends sufficient time learning to play the sheet music of the piano sonata number 11 in A major, for example, she will be able to hear the master Mozart. Concerning the second idea of symbolism, Theosophy teaches the following critical notion. We live in an allegorical world. Higher planes of life are reflected and mirrored into lower planes in differing degrees of homogeneity and heterogeneity. As above, so below. Nature is the mirror of the divine. The wisdom of life can be found in the symbols and signs of nature. Hence why ancient mankind observed a much higher level of reverence for Mother Nature than does modern man. The Secret Doctrine of HPB is filled with symbolism drawn from a dizzying array of ancient civilizations, which in many ways and at many levels points to this underlying metaphysics in the first proposition. The lotus, the rose, the sun, the moon, the tree, the serpent, the fire, water, air, the wheel, circle, triangle, square, the primary numbers, pi, 3.141159. Colors of the rainbow, sounds of the scale, the golden measure, just to name a few, are treated as keys to discover the hidden metaphysics found in sacred texts and governing the cosmos. And this leads us to the third common element of sacred texts, namely ethics. The capacities and potential within the human constitution are awakened through the development of the virtues. This is the old way. Real learning is not limited to intellectual comprehension. The heart, too, must be trained. Empathy and compassion also require a practice. The spiritual path pointed to in sacred texts is a gradual flowering of hidden potential. It is the embryonic unfoldment of latent powers of perception currently dormant in the mass of humanity. But it is awake and active in the sage and the mystic. In a word, it is the development of character, of divine character. And when consciousness reaches the human stage, we are told in the Secret Doctrine, this unfoldment is only possible through self-induced and self-devised efforts. This means, of course, practices of negation and affirmation of our own choosing. Sacred texts were given to provide time-tested methods to choose from. But there is no vicarious development, no shortcuts, no cheap solutions. If we choose to play the piano, we must practice. There are piano teachers to guide one, but we must put in the work if we desire to play. The self-discipline pointed to here, at its core, is in the service of a divine ethics that says that every act counts, every thought has a consequence, every motive has a bearing on the world and on oneself. Can we see a consistent ethics throughout sacred texts that insists upon empathy and compassion? Of course. Altruism over selfishness, love over hate. There is a sublime struggle here. This is why epic battles like we find in the Ramayana and the Mahabharata symbolize the struggle of the pilgrim soul to overcome the forces of separateness and violence within the human constitution. Ethics manifests itself in good work, in duty, and in service to our fellow man. HPB's teachers memorably made this point. If you would know us, study our philosophy. If you would serve us, serve our humanity. Students of ancient wisdom are encouraged to establish an original relationship with the Secret Doctrine. It is not necessary to have a college degree or to be capable of reading ancient Greek or Sanskrit. If the light on the path, the voice of the silence, the Gita, the Tao Te Ching speak to you in any way, you have a start. Familiarity with the basic precepts in the Secret Doctrine will help to expand one's understanding of what it is that speaks to you. The Tao, for example, talks about the 10,000 things in non-being. The Secret Doctrine explains the difference between the manifest and the unmanifest. The Gita speaks of Krishna as a personage, yet also as the spirit of all existence. The Secret Doctrine describes this Krishna spirit as within and beyond life, as the impersonal logos. The voice of the silence teaches us that the mind is the great slayer of the real. The Secret Doctrine reminds us that manas, or mind, is dual, having a higher and a lower capacity. The slayer of the real is kama manas, and not buddhi manas. Behind every axiom and pronouncement of a sacred text lies a metaphysical explanation covered somewhere in the Secret Doctrine. Why is this true? Because universal ideas are universally relevant. Universal ideas are not bound by time or space or culture. The Secret Doctrine points to the core universal ideas of the esoteric philosophy. Each student must do their own thinking. When we are most honest with ourselves, we become aware of how little we really know about life and ourselves. This honesty leads to solid questions. Questions lead to contemplation, and contemplation begins the process of communication with our higher nature. The old way is to turn inward, to sustain an inner dialogue of contemplation, and to learn how to listen to the whispering of Buddhi to Manas. If we ask a question to ourselves with sufficient sincerity, we will receive an answer, but not when we expect it or where we expect it. But it will come, and we can test the process. At the heart of all sacred texts, something obvious and sometimes hidden lies in a central philosophical question. Who am I? Who am I? It's pretty simple. What is the self? What is it that needs training? What needs to be perfected? Who or what is watching the process? Who or what is being perfected? What is the self that is guiding? Why do I feel deep down in my soul a yearning to break out of the boundaries of my current sense of selfhood and move in the direction of the horizon? From where comes this divine discontent, this hunger to know more, to feel more deeply, to connect more broadly? In this massive universe, immense cosmos, beyond our capacity to measure either in space or time, on this wonderful planet with its nearly 8 billion people, why, oh why, do I find myself in this particular body, with this particular name, at this time, in these circumstances? It is an existential question. Why not somewhere else, with a different name, in a different body, in a different land? It is a sublime mystery, a perpetual conundrum. Who am I? And to take it further, who or what wants to know? Who's doing the asking? The Secret Doctrine is an exploration of the frontiers of consciousness. It is the examination of the varieties of vehicles, instruments, and lenses of perception. It is the appreciation of the divine dance between spirit and matter. Are these not at the heart of the matter? In Shankara's Crest Jewel of Wisdom, the Genesis of the Old Testament, the Diamond Sutra of the Buddha, the Republic of Plato, and others? Many a student would agree that sacred texts are ladders to ascend the mountain of selfhood. Our teachers make it clear that to unlock the prison cell of separative selfhood, it is critical that we expand our sense of time and space. And this too is precisely where the Secret Doctrine comes to our aid. We have a shrunken notions of time and space, which limit our ability to contextualize properly. We measure time in the context of a single life of X number of years. We use the context of the phases of a single lifetime as a reference point. We are confined to the scope of a century, a decade, a year, a day. How petty and irrelevant this must seem to the gods who measure time in manvantras and pralayas, in billions of earth years. What is the meaning of time from that standpoint? What is the meaning of time from the perspective of eternity? In regards to space, we draw a circle around our bodies, expand it to a room, a home, a neighborhood, a region, a country, a continent, a hemisphere, a planet even, a solar system, and perhaps beyond. And yet none of these scales of measure can provide any adequate perspective on the immensity of cosmic space, either macrocosmically or microcosmically. And the more we contemplate this, we come to realize that our five senses are liars. and why the ancient sages called life in a body illusory. So our notions of time and space are naturally constricted because we identify with our bodies and our names in limited time and space. Yet the Secret Doctrine and sacred text talk about life outside of time and space. To begin to break down these conceptual limitations, we need to inch our way into the arena of metaphysics. And although we might feel like we are drowning when we read the Secret Doctrine, it is important that we persist. When we question conventional notions of time and space, it is logical to ask questions like this. In what sense am I within the body? Or could it be that this I has no location in physical space, and the body is a tool to navigate this particular plane of existence? The seeker of truth wants to know. The spiritual path, from one point of view, begins with the existential realization that I really do not know who I am. And moreover, the willingness to grow comfortable in this uncomfortable realization. Get used to it, we might hear our teacher saying. It's going to be a long ride. Additionally, when we engage the who am I questions, in earnest, we join a great fraternity and sorority of sages, saints, and mystics, all climbing the same mountain of selfhood. We feel our steps quicken with the synergy of all of their efforts. We position ourselves to be of aid to others that we might encounter along the way. Sacred texts are testaments to their investigations. With every nation, every culture, and every religious tradition, there are individuals who have experienced higher levels of consciousness and established some level of residency in the sublime. These mystics provide testimony for these higher planes of existence. From these spiritual pioneers comes humanity's sacred texts. The problem for modern man is sifting through the backwash of half-truth and dogmatism parading around as truth. Plato made the point that the real enemy of truth is not necessarily falsehood, but rather the appearance of truth. This is precisely why the Secret Doctrine was written. It is not to tell us what to think, but instead how to think, how to sift, what to look for, and how to find the hidden gold buried in the sediment. The study of sacred texts ought not be an academic exercise, but rather a soul exercise. Memorization and facts take a back seat to devotion and inspiration. Anyone who finds a passage or a phrase that speaks to their soul can make it sacred and their own by silently cherishing it in the mind and the heart. They can return to it again and again for inspiration and guidance. Add to this a philosophical exercise in trying to see this idea or this inspiration or communication in the context of the broader scheme of the divine wisdom, which the book, The Secret Doctrine, aids us in, and will help us to find inspiration to grow exponentially in that inspiration. In Theosophy, any one idea is tied to every other idea. It's magical. The temptation will be to see it from the perspective of one's likes and dislikes, and the notions of conventional thinking, and of one's cultural assumptions. We only live once is an example of a cultural assumption. We have to try harder. We must be more independent, more universal. If I see myself as an immortal soul, untied to any nation, any culture, any era, or language, how would I view this idea from that perspective? Does it or does it not appeal to that self, that inner sense of self, beyond the conventional thinking of the day and the false identifications of a particular lifetime? How can I use this idea to make the lives of those around me better? This enterprise is really rather simple, and it is open to all. In the Great Master's letter, it is said, "It is not the individual and determined purpose of attaining for oneself nirvana, the culmination of all knowledge and absolute wisdom, which is after all only an exalted and glorious selfishness, but the self-sacrificing pursuit of the best means to lead on the right path our neighbor, to cause as many of our fellow creatures as we possibly can to benefit by it, which constitutes the true theosophist." The spiritual life is often misunderstood as being one of seeking peace and tranquility for oneself. Well, the voice of the silence counters, "Can there be bliss when all that lives must suffer? Shalt thou be saved and hear the whole world cry?" The seeker may feel the need to withdraw from the world from time to time into the calm of meditation, solitude, and contemplation. But could it be that the altruistic yogi is engaged in a noble struggle to master the lower mind, wrestle it to the ground, train it to focus, and squeeze out all vestiges of selfishness and separateness so as to prepare oneself for yet more important duties down the road of life? In the end, each pilgrim soul is writing their own sacred text, composing their own edition of the Secret Doctrine. Each one of us has his or her own chemistry problem to solve, a different Voldemort, if you will, to conquer. But it is important to note that the puzzle may be unique, but the prize is universal. There is but one Atman, one self we all partake in. The Secret Doctrine prepares the student to approach any of the sacred texts from the standpoint of the immortal soul. It is a task we do both in solitude and together. In that spirit, the Rig Veda beautifully sings these closing lines. "Common be your prayer. Common be your goal. Common be your purpose. Common be your deliberation. Common be your wishes. Your hearts in concord, your intentions in concord. Perfect be the union amongst you." Thank you.